So I'd looked at the patch 105 notes for Mio multiplayer and thought this was a pretty sound update going forward, with needed nerfs to the Vanquisher and buffs to single fire weapons, so that actually is viable as the Vanquisher while addressing some of the easy gold, easy life melee builds that are cropping up as well. And finally getting rid of the horrible outlaw meta that forced so many lobbies to basically take the fun out of the game just for easy credits. I'll be breaking down the changes in order of significance, from game breaking fixes or changes, aka the most controversial changes, primary effects, aka changes to meta skill sets, weapons and items, secondary effects, which are typically just balance changes, and least important, although very welcomed, bug fixes. I'll be starting now. The game changer changes. The Vanquisher. Holy shit. This weapon is like the scourge of solo queue and Mia, using often very high risk, high reward builds like the Krogan Vanguard melee, with Bastion instead of Shock Trooper. I'd go neck and neck or commonly second against someone sitting back with a good old Vanquisher. This gun is fucking ridiculous, and it pisses me off it basically does the damage of 2 teammates in one weapon. What I find really interesting is, that was the actual case. A bug caused the extra 100% headshot bonus on the Vanquisher, so it did essentially double damage on headshots compared to other sniper rifles. Guess I found out where the meta came from. So how does this address the future of the Vanquisher? It's still one of the top tier weapons in the game, and has a great ability to sustain fire on targets, dealing the best damage of its class. It's still basically the best non-single shot sniper in the game. It's one of the best options for sharpshooters who want to focus small guys instead of big guys, by definition of a multi-shot sniper. What I think of the Vanquisher right now is that it's actually going to serve its purpose as a result of this change, and it's definitely going to actually fit a niche as compared to just replacing weapons like the Black Widow, which is an ultra rare weapon that performed worse than the Vanquisher overall, and that should not be happening. That brings me on to single shot and semi-auto weapons as a whole. BioWare have buffed an entire group of weapons as they discover a major imbalance in their DPS compared to auto weapons. I too felt this significantly when using the Matic, an uncommon quality weapon. I quite literally wanted to kill myself amid a bloody silver game. Now the Matic is part of a type of weapon designed to have the ability where you can fire as fast as you can click, with weapons like the Sandstorm and the Halberd falling into similar categories, but not quite the same niche, as they have lower fire rates. While the Matic's DPS is now fixed as the bug preventing it reaching its incredible rate of fire has been removed, they had to adjust its damage because it became too strong. Its damage is now about 30% less at all ranges in response to partially offsetting the increase in rate of fire, and increased its spare ammo capacity by 50%. Other single shot weapons all had increases in damage. The Sandstorm had an increase of 23% in damage, and the Halberd had an increase of 26% in damage. The Predator, although a beginner weapon nonetheless, now additionally benefits from the rate of fire adjustment brought on from the bug fix, and gets a 42% increase in damage at all ranges, with a very small decrease in rate of fire to offset the DPS increase. The Carnifex has an increase of 13% damage, and the Hornet has an increase of 20% in damage. The Phalanx has an increase in damage of 25%, and the Scorpion, a very popular weapon that I even use as part of a melee build, has an increase of 13% damage. Phew, that's finally the single shot category adjustments out of the way. I can see the future of single shot weapons being a much more welcome addition, with perhaps a great buff to the Matic, which I'll have to try out at some point. Considering weapons like the Halberd, Sandstorm and Hornet had significant increases in damage, you should be seeing those come more and more into the meta as we go on. So definitely look at those weapons and try them out if you get them. They shouldn't be underestimated. Remnant weapons. They're finally getting a look, and it was needed. Weapons like the Shadow had absolutely pitiful DPS, that made me want to quickly pop her for a cuppa while my local small-time raider bathes in the fucking laser like it was UV radiation. The Sweeper didn't appear to be in a similar place, however. It did get a damage increase, as I've seen more people run with equalizers and the Sweepers in classes that probably warrant an assault rifle approach. The Shadow gets a 40% increase in damage. 40% increase. This weapon may actually be viable, so again, try this shit out when you can. And the Sweeper gets a measly 10% increase in damage, but it most likely helps you hit damage thresholds much more quickly, and probably assists in survivability. There have been no changes to the equalizer. Before moving on to the enemies, which is a big topic, I want to make an honourable mention that didn't really fit into the last two categories, the single shot and remnant that were addressed. The Indra, the burst fire sniper rifle, now gives a damage increase of 25%. This weapon is actually super viable in silver, and I can only imagine it's got brilliant strength in gold right now. Especially with boosts like turbocharge to it, it's been tearing through people for me. It can only be better in gold now and should not be overlooked. We aren't even done with the game changer changes. This is pretty much how much we needed the patch. Outlaws. This enemy was an insanely common farmer spot for gold difficulty, as the enemy features a super enemy that cannot sync kill and enemies that aren't good at driving you out of cover or into cover. They have the simplest weak points to hit and lack real special abilities, like the Destin's Cloak or the Anointed's DPS presence that the Sharpshooter couldn't fill, and are the most forgiving for Bartics due to their significant lack of shields, which act as damage gates to prevent one-shots compared to the other enemy factions. RD no longer give you long-term aids as they cannot chain CC attacks or sync attacks, so clearing out a group of them isn't an absolute clown fiesta. Sharpshooters now have much greater DPS presence as they fire more frequently, with an increase in 44% more damage. They will sprint and reposition more often, and will shoot quicker if their target are at shorter ranges. When a sharpshooter fires or aims at you, it's much more clearer than before, so you know when to book it. They'll no longer blindly follow melee targets over large distances. The next part is big. The Hydra can now instant kill with his sync attack, as opposed to before where he was the most forgiving super out of the whole lot, and the infamous Vanguards which is headbutt him to death, myself included. Tactical Cloak now actually stops him from locking onto you mid-lock-on, so that's a lot more forgiving, and what I think you'll be seeing with Outlaws here is Sharpshooters and Hydras now becoming more of a problem. Sharpshooters fill a naturally decent DPS presence, and you're going to need a Vanguard or a better Sharpshooter in your squad to succeed in gold difficulty now. Hydras can't be soloed by Vanguards anymore, so the Engineer classes can actually get some love for once. And with the RD's chain CC no longer possible, Outlaw is only a little more difficult, but definitely not impossible. With a good team, the threat of Outlaw is still going to make them potentially still a weaker faction, but since they were pretty neck and neck with Remnant, I think we'll be seeing Remnant being a bit weaker. That actually brings me on to the next class, the Remnant. The Observer now stops shooting you if you cloak, thank god, and its beam has become much less oppressive, with lower duration and lower damage, so less DPS, by about 10%. The Nullifier, notorious for great presence at getting people out of cover, now has its rate of fire decreased against people in cover. The attacks travel faster and hit harder, and it will stay and fire in much more situations, instead of just setting up shop and then going on vacation in the next heartbeat. They'll actually be able to face up to melees now. Now there has been a shit show over melee in response to these patch notes, but the reduced effectiveness isn't enough to damage. Some player melees can be interrupted by enemy attacks now, and that's pretty much it. The oppressiveness of melee did need to get nerfed a bit to account for walking all over single targets, since most melee builds also don't take skills like martial arts, which is kind of counterproductive now that I think about it. A lot of people choose the melee route because it does so much damage. Like 2 melees can kill a sharpshooter when his shields are down. It's very strong and a viable alternative to just trying to farm for guns all day, because guns are pretty weak at gold difficulty right now. In the description there's going to be a link to a boycott. I personally aren't planning to actively take part in it. I might not even play Mia multiplayer on the day. I'm not a regular player because I play a variety of games. I play CSGO, even though a lot of people don't really play it anymore, but it's still a game that people do play, quite actively in fact, and I play games like League of Legends as well, but people are boycotting against Mia and against BioWare for not addressing a lot of the problems with guns right now, because they aren't doing enough damage, and melee is just shining a bit too much, and biotic powers do not do enough damage. So that's just a thought to consider in response to these patch notes. I won't make a list for this part because these are the bug fixes. Stealth Grid no longer deactivates instantly after being used. Ascension charges in the Kinesisist class can now be gained even when not the host of the match. Lance and Throw will actually increase our biotic detonation challenges progress now, and super enemies and boss enemies will now actually target nearby enemies, so players can tank properly for their team. The Anointed can no longer be cheesed by standing next to it, avoiding all of its damage, and the Outlaw Agent's clone does not give points anymore. This patch is a big deal and addresses the annoying metas of the Outlaw and the Vanquisher, and the repetitiveness of melee. You can finally start to see some variations in the changes of weapons being used and the way people play, plus the rise of engineers that are armoured targets like the Nullifier and Berserkers who now can't get soloed by Vanguards, and hydras that can be debilitated and vanquished. Thanks for watching this patch video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I'll be doing more patch vids as they come, as long as they are major patch changes. Subscribe if you want to hear more of my insight on Mia. I have videos on damage resistance and firearm DPS that you should definitely check out.
I love those dear hearts and gentle people who live in my hometown, because